Welcome back to part 3 of my devlog series through the audio implementation of Live, Die, Repeat. Live, Die, Repair. Thank you for checking out the first 2 videos. I really hope you enjoyed them. And as a recap, in the first devlog, I showed you my Reaper session, which is the audio workstation where I created all the audio assets for the game, such as the music and the sound effects. And then in the second devlog, I showed you how at literally the click of a button, I was able to import them into Wwise as all of our audio assets. I was also able to create events for each of these actions. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk you through how I implemented these events into the Unity project. So in Unity, basically at a foundational level, we are able to integrate Wwise with Unity through very simple triggers. So essentially we can use either predefined components in Unity that are built from Wwise that can trigger events, or we can insert code directly into a script that will basically tell Wwise what to do when a certain thing happens. And we can have conditions in there, all these if statements. But basically what I was able to do was have our event system in Wwise be triggered by all this code either attached to the player, attached to a global game object, or the monsters. So I'm going to take us through a few examples of how I was able to use the code to trigger events in Wwise. So our events list here, I tried to color code it so it's visually easy to sort through. We have environment noises such as the air leak, distant roars of the monster sounds, the door opening, the door closing, a siren, and stopping the air leak when there is a fix. What I'm able to do is have all of these events get triggered by Unity. So I can open up our Unity project and go through how some of this looks under the hood. So for example, with our player, we have a number of different components around the player information, such as, the light, the animator, and then we have a few different components in here that I have that are integrated directly into Wwise. One of them being an event to start the player's low life. So what I have set up here is a system so that it's going to start the sound effect, but it'll increase the volume. It'll start at 0. It'll increase the volume as the player's health goes down or as their oxygen level goes down. I'm also able to define different things such as the player death sound, the player jumping sound, the player fixing sound. So this is really all just through a script that I have defined as triggering these events on certain circumstances. So here's the code. It's very simple. All it is a series of these public items so that I can select it directly in the inspector which event it's going to be. Then I've named them player death, player jump, player fix. And then essentially we have these public void items so what I can do is basically have Unity tell Wwise in the event that I am, calling this function, the play fix. So that is going to be attached to our Wwise event that I've selected here, play SFX, player fix leak. It's going to play that item, or it's going to trigger that event for me when this happens. Now, how am I telling Unity to trigger this? These I have all tied to animations. So if we go back into Unity and we pull up our animator window, for the player, we have a different, series of these different animation events. One of them is repair. So if we find our character, we zoom in, when we play this event, we can see that they are, sitting down, standing back up. What I'm able to do is this little guy right here. This is basically an event trigger that I've set in. So I can add an event. And so I've added that in. And then the function in our inspector here, I'm able to go into my player sounds script, my methods, and I can say play fix. So what this is doing is basically it's telling Unity when this animation is occurring, and when I hit this point of the animation, which is the beginning, we're going to call this function of play fix. And as we saw in the script, play fix is going to post the player fix item, this event, which I defined on the player as play SFX, player, fix, leak, which in Wwise sounds like this. So that's the event that gets triggered. And I have this for a series of different ones. So I even have one for the walk, and you can see that I have 2 different events in here because the player has 2 feet as part of the animation. So as I set this up, I can just go through the different keyframes and decide, all right, at this point, I want it to trigger the first footstep. And then as they go through, I decided that this was the frame where it plays the next footstep. So I play footstep and the second one. So again, that event is just calling the play footstep function from the script. That's how I handled a lot of the sounds that are based on these animations for the player. But some other events are triggered in other ways. Like for the flashlight, as an example, I have a flashlight status script. And what this is doing is it's checking for the status of the flashlight. And basically what we have done is during the update, so every frame, it's going to check this. If the current status is on, then it's going to post the events to Wwise directly from the script, and it's going to trigger the flashlight on event, which if we look in Wwise, that's going to do 2 things. It's going to play the flashlight static hum, and it's going to play the flashlight switch sound. And then if flashlight is off, it'll play the flashlight off event, which will stop the static hum with a fade time. It'll slowly fade out the flashlight sound, and it'll play the flashlight switch again. So it sounds like it's clicking on and off. So this is how that would sound. So if I bring both of these events into my Soundcaster, I can play flashlight on. And then flashlight off. So you could hear that bit of static, which is the sound of the flashlight on, just to give a bit of more ambience to the game. And then the switches itself is what sounds like it's turning on and off. I also have this Wwise global game object, which is handling a few different things, such as it's loading the actual sound bank, so it knows what files to prep and what to actually play. I have a trigger randomizer script, which is playing all those different musical themes at random, which I demonstrated in the last devlog. We also have a distant roars event. So this is really cool because this is going to give some ambience to the game where at some point every 10 to 30 seconds it's going to randomly play a distant roar. And so what that sounds like in Wwise is playing from our random container a distant roar sound. So this here's one. Here's another. And another. So it's going to add a lot of tension to the game by playing these randomized distant roars, so it makes the player feel like there are monsters out there. And it's very effective because you're not going to hear the same one back to back. It's randomized in a very intelligent way, so that it's not playing the same thing over and over again. But I also have items attached to the monster. So the monster is a very interesting sound item because if I select my monster. So with the monsters, I'm doing a similar thing with the player. So for the monster walking, I have these different events for each playing of the step. However, what I want to do, I don't want to have the step playing just directly in, in the middle of the sound field. I want it to come from where the monster is approaching the player, so they can hear in their left ear. If they have headphones, they'll hear it in their left ear. So if they hear in their right ear, they know the monster is somewhere to the right. If they hear it in their left ear, they know the monster is somewhere to the left. So I can still trigger the same events as if it's just the monster walking as part of that animation. It's going to trigger these footsteps. I mean, they're very, very ominous footsteps as well. And the cool thing with the footsteps is it's 2 layers. One is a thump, and another is this kind of wet squelching noise, and it's really, really creepy. So imagine hearing that from either your right ear or your left ear. You don't know exactly where the monster is because it's dark, but you hear them approaching. The way that I've set that up is in the actual audio container of Footstep, we have a method of positioning. So I have it set up right now that it has listener relative. So all of the monster sounds actually are going to be in this position and orientation. If I click on my monster actor mixer, I can see that I'm having the panning completely 100% and the attenuation based on distance. So if the monster is, 100 yards away, I'm not going to hear them. But with this distance parameter, the closer they get, the louder the sound will be. So it's technically always playing. We just don't hear it until the monster gets close. So that's a really cool feature within Wwise, is to use this attenuation so that as the monster gets closer, the sound is emitting from the monster. I'm not just hearing it at all times, it's only when they get close. So it really adds tension because they get closer, the footsteps get louder. It's really, really fun to play with that and to hear that sound coming from one side of the game. So again, with the monster, I can have the events trigger based on them attacking as well. And so we have a ton of different scripts to help handle that, such as the monster sounds. We have the distance to objects to track the enemy proximity, which is what helps determine that volume for the attenuation. So on our menu screen, we have our start button, our credits button. So in our canvas item, I have start, and we can see that I have my UI event sound. So essentially what this is doing is it's going to play the UI button click when I have the actual button being clicked. And then we have button hover, so that if I'm simply hovering over the button, it's going to play a slightly different sound. So it makes for a really cool sound effects system. And it's simply using the function on pointer down, on pointer enter. It's going to play the button hover events, whatever I have defined in my inspector here. And then it triggers that just from Wwise. So here's button click and button hover. It's a very subtle little sound, but it really adds for that feel for the game when you're hovering over a button and then you click it and it's a different sound. It's a very satisfying click with a bit of a reverb. So that is everything that I have to show for Live, Die, Repair and the audio implementation that I did for it. I hope this was interesting. I hope you enjoyed and you learned something new about audio and how you can integrate Wwise with Unity directly and call those events. If you want to see more stuff like this, please let me know. I have a few other projects I'd love to dig into or show you how you can do all this yourself. If you're an indie dev and you want to just take care of this audio yourself, I can do a full tutorial, a much more in-depth look of creating assets from scratch, creating all of the events and configurations in Wwise, and then doing all the integration. So I can do a much more in-depth look at that process if that's something that interests you. So please leave a comment, leave a like, subscribe if you're interested in this kind of content, because I absolutely love this interactive music and sound effects and doing all the implementation in Wwise and Unity. So I hope you have an awesome day. Take care and see you in the next one.